Check 1 2, electric boogaloo. Starting the day off with this is the new. Can you see that? No, maybe you can. Maybe you can't. The new mic. Doors open. Air conditioner's on. There's noise. At this point, I'm assuming deal with it because I hope this mic is better than this mic in my current configuration. But it seems I've been watching the. It's funny. I wouldn't really pay much attention to the idea of a hurricane or tropical storm, were it not for kind of being drawn into the CU Buffs reality. What color should we go for? Only because watching one of the videos probably reached the people, or point is the Coach Prime and the coaching team has decided to move the team tonight. Which should mean they'll get there tonight, weather the storm. The storm hits tomorrow. They have plans and or practice facilities reserved and waiting. And the expectation, it seems, interestingly enough, is to get into Florida, hunker down, weather a storm, practice through the storm, and then rest up and play a game on Saturday. And I kind of assume that most excuse me. Most of the reasoning is to provide consistency for the players, to tell them what they're going to expect, so it's easier for them to adjust. But I can only assume Coach Prime and a number of other coaches and players are from that area, so they would be aware that after a storm like that, travel is a lot more difficult than being there, maybe. I can't say that would be my what I would do, because maybe I'm a little bit more paranoid about it all. But depending on when the game is, and I also don't have an exact awareness of what the NFL would do. I think if I was a player on a team, this is what I would do. Meaning that if I was an NFL player and there was going to be a big game in a place like we're going to play this weekend, I guess all of the golf is going to get kind of thumped. I'd pay my own way or work it out so I was for sure there before. But then, who knows what might get canceled or how. The way I'm seeing it is they're saying that the hurricane is going to hit on tomorrow, Thursday, meaning Friday and Saturday.
America is in a race.
I'm muting that because I don't have copyrights to any of this stuff, and I'm not going to do like the Asian channels or the other channels do and put the screen all cattywampus thinking I'm beating a bot or something. And from my awareness, where it says Tallahassee is essentially where the college and the game will be. It's kind of fun because I'm learning about weather patterns and stuff I wouldn't have known about otherwise. I think I got way too much audio here. Let's crush that. Let's crush that just cause. I realize it's sort of weird to say, but I'm almost thinking that this Rock Band mic is a better quality microphone than my fancy USB joinky kind of thing. Plus, I was thinking about that this morning, that the Rock Band mic, how can I put it? It was designed to be owned by kids that wouldn't, probably more durable because it's designed for kids. Does that make sense? Like, they wouldn't care about stuff, so they just bang it around. So they had to make all of the stuff a lot more durable than maybe even a Shure SM58. Man, I'm gonna pause that because my ADD's freaking out, and it's Wednesday. Why do I hear lawns mowing? That's Friday. It's supposed to be Friday. So yeah, it's another day of doing much nothing. So if you accidentally stumble upon this, sorry about your luck. Wasn't intended. I assume I'm just over in my little void. As I mentioned before, when if I try to use social media, or in the past when I've attempted to use social media to attract attention and or traffic and awareness that my presence was now, or a couple years ago, was on a website, I guess we can visit that, only because I haven't had any visitors. Other than myself, I'm still not convinced it doesn't include all three. But I guess I could do that if I so chose. I was thinking I could edit that and put this one in there, but I kind of don't want to, do I? Not really. Rhonda Sandbag. It's so weird. I was watching this
Actor with me.
I don't want to hear him. I was watching this thing earlier, and it was kind of weird because he was like, make sure you take your dogs. Every county will have at least one pet-friendly shelter, so be sure to take your dogs. And I thought, or pets, and I'm like, what kind of people need a reminder like that the governor considers that a necessary announcement? You know what I mean? Like, oh, by the way, don't forget your kids. That's what that would sound like to somebody in Boulder. Like, I don't have a dog, but I understand in many ways a dog is very similar to a kid in that with benefits, sort of, in that they're lots easier to train, and if you train them correctly, they make life easier. If you train them incorrectly or you refuse to train them, they pick up on their own tips and tricks from other doggies in the neighborhood, and well, fortunately, that's not my reality, but I was enjoying the distraction of thinking about what's going to happen with this hurricane.
If you've been waiting for the right time to send a donation.
Okay, pause. Social commentary, can we? Do I have a microphone on? Is this thing on? What in the actual fuck happened to this world where, I mean, I almost could have believed Democrats doing this, I don't even know how to put it, political cardboard sign flying, like begging on the corner at every video related to the news. And I've seen it on both sides. I know that both sides are owned by the corporations. There's absolutely zero difference in the two sides of them, other than possibly the overall kingpin money man on the top of the chain. And they decide all of this nonsense. Don't sell me your country, just tell me the weather. So, here, this is what I was looking for exactly. So, it's Wednesday now at 2 o'clock. So, if the team left really any time tonight, right, and got there before tomorrow at Thursday, they'd be able to practice a full practice and then find a place to hunker down, right? Thursday, and then Friday, I don't know, I'm guessing it's a warm dress day off, check out the stadium, and then Saturday the game, and I'm not even sure at what time. I sort of stopped paying attention when I realized that they changed times every week, it seems, depending on TV ratings and fan base and approval and stuff like that. I remember seeing early on, a lot of schedules were, the date was set, but the time was to be announced. I should have gone to the one I'd already been to, because I probably know that that's the right one. All I want is the schedule. See, I guess it would, there we go, see bus football. 1:30 p.m. So it's been, here we go, see how it says TBD? I think that's to be determined. And these are games that already happened, right? Yeah, so this is this week. And is this a bye week? October 12th. When's that? Yeah, because there's an October 5th before the October 28th. I mean September 28th. Right. So a game and then bye week and then a game. And this is when we assume everyone will be healthy, and that will be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Why do I say 6 game stretch? I don't see an easy game in any of those, honestly. But again, I'm not sure where all these teams are. I can see the rankings, but I don't really pay much attention to that. I still believe you can get, if you won all these games, obviously it's 1-11 2 years after, and I mean that's 11-1 record 2 years after a 1-11 record. That's what I want to see as far as Heisman's, as far as all of that other political whatevers. If it's not already corrupted by agents and owners, I'd be highly surprised. You know what I mean? Like, certain players have certain agents, and they want those, and certain agents have relationships with certain coaches and or owners. So those agents want their players to win those trophies, because then they can demand a higher pay, and the owners can justify it to their team or partnerships. I wonder how many are. I know some are partnerships and some are just one dude that owns it, like Dallas. And I guess I could, and I did this on purpose so I could show the main screen, like, right? I did this screen because that's my center control screen. That's all my screens, and that's okay. Do I like the way that that's sitting? I don't care about that. I don't care about that. $54. What are the other ones at? $86. See, that's not right. Let's take that up to 60, maybe, and bring the other one down to 60. $60, $40, $91, $60, $40. Oops. Oh, I got some snap to something going on. So 99 at the bottom. Let's do it that way. Maybe. I'm going to call it good enough. I think I've saved all these scenes. And there are way more studied people to talk about that than I am. I like how the influence of athletics and promoting competition to the public tend to create a type of I think they call it a culture because, like a culture in cheese or tofu or tempeh or whatever you're maybe working with, the culture grows and the idea or spreads. And I think the idea of centering community attention around a culture that's all about being complementary while doing the best for yourself and your team as a collective is a positive influence, to say the least. And of course, one of the most negative drawbacks of the whole thing is being forced to contend with 3 hours of commercials for essentially 15 to 30 minutes of gameplay. That always had me a little bit on the, you lost me at hello. Which is something I forget, I forget that people have internal biases, prejudices, judgments, and ideas of what makes or defines a person. And when I said that, I just realized that there's probably lots of people that have said no before they even spoke to me just by looking at me, which some might think is a negative thing, but for me anyway, it seems more like a positive thing because it allows me to acknowledge more so the reality Somebody once told me that when someone tells you who they are, believe them. And by tell, they mean in the same way that a con artist or a lie detector person will be able to tell or judge if you're telling the truth or being dishonest or whatever. There are things that they say are called tells, where those, how would you put it? Usually unconditioned programmed responses that are easily identifiable in a similar way of a trigger also trigger someone's ability to recognize deception. Like there's something to do with the different directions that somebody's eyes look, either up or down or left or right, the different corners. I don't know what those things are because I've always just kind of gone with my gut and kept everything at arm's length if I could help it. But it was kind of fun. I almost feel I personally missed out on the opportunity in that. And granted, I never had the idea until just now. But yesterday when I went on my afternoon smoke break, normally it's odd. I found this little bong, and I've recently adjusted my cannabis purchasing habits to utilize that, because normally I have a rolling tray with shake on it, and I'll just twist up a joint and would normally smoke one. I might take 2 or 3 walks depending on the weather and the temperature and the time of year. So anyway, if I'd have been testing, if I'd have taken that camera with me, if for nothing else, just to test the wind resistance of this, I was cruising around, essentially minding my own business, smoking a joint. And the neighbor kid from Texas popped out and hollered Scott or Steve, or I can't remember what he said. And I kind of heard it, but I assumed he was talking to somebody else, and I didn't pay no attention. I was just smoking my joint. And I wasn't looking to incite a party. I don't know if that makes much sense. He's a cool kid. He's 17. If I didn't know his parents, I'd probably... I don't know that I'd share it, but I might kick him down what was left, kind of thing. But anyway, we had an interesting conversation. I was completely, like, almost shocked that any kid living in Boulder would consider the military an intelligent life option path, like life path option, however that's worded. Mostly because I was fortunate. I had a really long, as far as I'm aware, multiple generations and all branches of the family tree all provided service in one form or another to the government or the United States in some way or the other, I think. Growing up, my grandfather, my dad's dad, and his wife, they had a family gun rack that had a sword in it that was supposedly from a relative that was the youngest sergeant at the age of 12. He got, the sword was a cavalry sword from someone on the South, Confederate soldier. Supposedly he took his sword, his gun, and his hat, and his uniform or something, and his horse, and rode it back. Anyway, that's a cool, funny story, no matter if I was related to that person or not, but supposedly I am. I also remember there was a 30-06 that was kind of, or could have been, my grandfather's World War I or II rifle. And then, of course, there's a 22, there's an over-under, there's a regular shotgun, like the hunting stuff. But those previously mentioned weapons were kind of like family heirlooms. I don't know how to put it, but you know how some people that are fancy, they have a really fancy, like my mom's mom, my granny on my mother's side, she had a big display cabinet with fancy dishes that were only used on certain occasions. I don't know if those dishes were hand-me-downs from previous generations, but if so, it's almost a flatware dishes, things like that, were only possessed by people who rarely were forced or chose to move around because stuff breaks, right? So if you're going to be a pioneer, you're probably not going to have a lot of family heirlooms of crystal and china until you get to your home place, and then you might collect those things, put it in a big display, and then when you pass away, you give it to your eldest, probably daughter. Which means, I guess, if that would be the case, my half-sister, Michelle, would have gotten that china nook or whatever the heck it was. My point being is on my dad's side, they didn't have china cabinets. They had gun racks or gun cabinets. But my dad being in Vietnam in the Navy, and I think mostly a lot of the things that he saw that he came back with as far as prejudice is against corporate things like diamonds and the pretended rarity of them in a manner in which only one family, the owners of the mines, get paid money. And if they give governments with military a lot of power and money, then the governments allow them to mine and or keep that monopoly to themselves. That personally is just my own kind of assumption. I'm aware that there was a movie called about blood diamonds. The only thing I can tell you that points this out is when my dad got remarried, he only got remarried once, and it was when I was like 18 or 19. But when he got remarried, he essentially had only one deal-breaking stipulation, and that was that the step monster was not to expect anything with a diamond in it. So they had their wedding rings custom made. I'm not sure that they had the same stones, but I know that they were different. I think hers was some kind of pointy pyramid thing, because she somehow attributed who she was. I think she thought she was Cleopatra's a descendant or something. And I'm not saying she ever spoke those words. I'm just saying she acts like that. The things that she tended to pretense interest in, or profane interest in, I don't even know what the right word is, vain interest in, it's funny because it wasn't a whole lot much different than my mom. The difference is my mom feigned interest in spiritual things like that, while the step monster feigned interest in other people's interest in their realities. It's the first time I've ever had a consistent relationship with someone I later understood was kind of a classic narcissist. That's a good word to practice saying. Not only just the word saying, but the word narcissist. Narcissist. You're unaware of it. I'm here exercising. You don't see it, but I feel it, and I also will hopefully hear it in that takes a lot of attention span to constantly keep track of the shape, dialect, and sound of my voice as I'm speaking. It's not unusual to worry of those things when performing or singing, because I've done that a lot, you know. And those processes generally are the final stage of a much bigger process as far as learning pieces, learning music, memorizing it, rehearsing it, practicing it, you know, editing it, allowing a director to adjust things between specific things or what have you. And I guess having done similar, I'm not even sure how to put it. In most schools, the highest singing class is like honor choir or vocal ensemble. And for whatever reason, I happened to get lucky going to a school, and our music teacher was also a classically trained opera singer and director. But she was very diligent in teaching everyone proper technique and had a number of tricks. For example, I'm an American. I don't speak Latin. I don't speak any of the other supposed languages, like some were in German, some were in Spanish, some were in other dialects. My point being is I didn't have to understand what the words or the sounds I was making with my mouth meant. All I had to do was make them sound as if they were those words. Meaning a lot of times I would read the lyrics, so to speak, or the vocalizations along with the notes, and I would see English vowels and syllables put together in the similar way of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, or la, si, do, which is, I think, Italian for the scale and the different terms of the different notes. But in those situations, through the repetition, you learn things. In one of the big things, especially during the holidays, there's a word that is related to the second house of the Abrahamic or Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Muslim traditions or religions. The second one has a holiday called Christmas. The way you say that word or how you would spell it define how you should enunciate it. And in singing, in that type of enunciation, a lot of times you have to say it in a way that wouldn't make sense if you were saying it. And in a lot of that, the goal is to make as quick an attempt at the parts where you use sibilants or say the letter S or sh or cri, smus. Like if I spell that CRISS dash MAS, someone might read Chris Mus. But what Ms. Getter taught us, our teacher, she's CRI and hold the I, and then at the very, 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 very end of it, SMAS. See, so that's two different phonetical spellings for the same word to elaborate how it's pronounced. So these bottom four teeth are fake because I got drunk and slipped on ice a couple years ago and bashed my face against cement and lost these four teeth. When I got the new fake teeth, replacement teeth on like a partial, it didn't quite fit, and recently they said they could fix it. They screwed up, honestly, because they told me they could fix it. They got it ready, meaning they encased it in all this stuff, which meant I would not have it for 2 weeks or more. They sent it to get relined, only to find out before they sent it, they don't reline anymore, but they did make adjustments. And part of the issue with having a lower set of brand new teeth, and it's weird. I know this is kind of crazy because when I was a kid, say I was Junior's age, I would wish to have had straighter teeth. It's not that they were crooked per se, but they weren't all the straightest. You know, some of them were kind of bunched together, and they were. I don't know if you've ever seen Ryan Reynolds' bottom teeth. Those are not straight teeth, but he's Ryan Reynolds. It doesn't really matter. All the rest of his stuff he's got it going on, so that becomes cute or whatever. I don't have all that other stuff going on, so to me, it was just kind of crookedy teeth. But you spend 50 years with that set of teeth, you learn how to speak in a manner that's, especially if you're used to using a microphone. People that don't use a microphone have no idea how hard it can be unless you naturally train your voice to speak in a way that is conducive to the most microphone functionality. I'm not sure if that makes much sense, but someone who has never had the training that I've had as far as how to speak and break words down in a way that elaborates the consonants but shortens the syllables but doesn't sound edited or self-edited. You know what I'm saying? Like, the goal is to just let whatever I'm saying roll, but while doing so, keeping check of they're not new teeth. They're just the same old teeth refit. They don't fit right down here, so when I eat, it hurts. I could have, would have called a week ago, didn't. Should have, could have, would have called this week, didn't. Pretty sure I at least sprained or damaged or fractured this pinky metacarpal. Last week I decided for whatever reason I wanted to take the cruiser board, which is like a long board, but it's a regular skateboard size, because it's normal to ride them super slow, and I was just looking to make the long slopes a little easier. And of course I'm very slowly going down the hill, right? I mean, not half a mile from my house or apartment or whatever, but right where the crest starts to go down, and it's a super long, super gradual. I'm not sure a basketball or any kind of ball would roll all the way down easily. It's that mellow of a graduation. But anyway, long story short, skateboard hit a rock. The little longboard skirted. I got sent. I've been a skateboarder, so I think I'm almost good unconsciously knowing I just rolled. I remember I hit this hand and I hit my knee and kind of skid and then took a roll. I had this cup in my hand and I didn't spill it. It does have a lid, but the lid thing was open. Or maybe it did spill a little bit. Anyway, it's like just my luck. And like there's cars all the way down, like a couple hundred cars worth of a street that it goes down. And I just happened to hit the rock right before a car where some girl was sitting in her car. I don't know, on the phone. I don't know. I couldn't hear it running. All I know is she just opened the door and goes, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just hit a rock." And I went back and grabbed my skateboard, walked along the sidewalk, kind of essentially walk it off and see what damage is there. And try not to get too comfortable because I just heard the S creeping in there, which is not good. Well, it is what it is. I had a really funny idea. I think it'd be great for a comical sketch, like for Saturday Night Live. But I'm not going to get into that because I wouldn't expect something to be seen on any of my stuff. Like I said, when I've tried to use social media like Twitter and or Facebook to attract clicks or traffic or whatever. When I looked, it was probably a couple years ago, but Twitter has had this feature off and on where you could see what the engagement of a post was, meaning how many people saw it, how many people interacted with it, meaning they clicked on it to look closer, and then how many people maybe share or retweet or whatever. Those are the different levels of engagement that a tweet gets. And when I see, I'll tweet something and for like months, 3 people see it. I'm like, yeah, I'm totally locked in the void over in the corner. I can believe with all the bots going on that there's interaction, but I can only think of one person in particular that's either commented or replied on my comments or replies to their tweets or, stuff that they're promoting. So yeah, anyway, when I looked at my, it was 3 months ago maybe, I don't know. I had one of those, I wonder if this will work situations, kind of like what I'm doing here, but I still haven't found what I'm doing here. I'm just doing here. I know that there are good reasons. It's kind of like practicing on a bye week if you didn't know who your opponent was going to be, or maybe at the very end of the season where you're, and I don't know how possible any of this stuff really is, like legitimately in the way that things are in the universe of, college football or whatever. But as far as the way I'm looking at it, I'm just thinking, I know I'm practicing for a reason, but I don't know who my opponent. I realize that's a rare situation because I think with the exception of bowl games, everything is predefined or predetermined. And I assume, and I'm not exactly sure how it works still, but as far as I was able to comprehend with the help of the Google AI Gemini, in college football, the bowl games are basically the runner-up games for everyone not in or eligible for the championship game or playoffs. But again, I don't really understand it. I remember that I thought that there would be 13 games in a season, meaning that everybody had 12 games. 2 teams go to the championship for their 13th game, and then a bunch of other really good teams would go to the bowl games depending on their conferences and stuff and rankings or whatever. That's about as far as I understood football as it was organized. I'm aware that they added something or changed something. Years ago, that meant a perfect season would be 13-0, right? Because you 12 season game wins and then a 13th bowl or championship game. But I guess there's another set of games in there somehow, because Gemini said that to win a perfect season, it would be 15 games, probably, assuming you won the championship. However, like has been seen before due to rankings or the way that it works, sometimes teams could have a undefeated season and still not win the championship or have a 13th game. I know that's happened a few times anyway that I can remember. And I guess it's good. I just had that inclination that, gosh, I wish I had some music or something that was going on to keep me a little more on point. But then I realized I'm streaming and I can't do that with YouTube without getting all kinds of... and I'm still not sure if that even matters, honestly. Other than it's really annoying to get all the emails. Like, I've done streams or podcasts where I knew there was copywritten. There was music that was other people's music, just happened to be on in the background. And it wasn't like I was promoting it. It was just on in the background. But some robot with super hearing ears heard it and goes, oh, wait, that's copyrighted material. You have to give us all of your advertising rates. Now, I live on disability. I'm not allowed to have advertising rates. I have configured some things as if I would be able to be a channel that has advertisers or sponsors. But the only reason I would want to do that would be if that meant the other ads wouldn't interrupt the video. I don't like YouTube ads mostly, or any other ads, because it interrupts my train of thought. If I'm learning or studying, like if I was a politician, I think one rule that should be worldwide, if it's educational, it does not get advertising, period. Never interrupted, never clickbaited, never nothing. You know what I'm saying? As for comments, I think those comments should be restricted only to the people that were subscribing to that specific channel, and therefore having a committed communication with the others that either, have opposing thoughts. In a scientific community, it's great because essentially you could have any scientist using this same exact technology I'm using right here, except they would have some kind of like dry erase board, and like showing you stuff and defining how x plus zx2l over y equals, whatever. That would enable people to then go, yeah, well, I see this or that, and other scientists could rebuttal. You know what I'm saying? And it gives them a forum. But what's the motivation outside of education and learning besides advertising to ruin it? You see what I'm saying? It like you attach or force someone to put up with the advertising. And how stupid is it that you can get rid of advertising if you pay money? Now, how stupid is that? Because if you could pay money to not see advertising, who's advertising to you and how? Because you are actually one that can afford all the junk that they're advertising. The people who can't afford to pay for advertising to not be there also can't afford the stuff they're advertising. See what I mean? It's almost like that advertising is really not there to sell stuff. It's there to make poor people feel poor. It's like, you suck because you can't afford this. Sorry about your luck. Maybe someday things like household cleaners will be included in everybody's, you know what I'm saying? If we're supposed to pay taxes on everything we buy, why not give us tax write-offs on everything that we are required to have to exist in a socially acceptable manner? You know what I mean? Like cleaning supply Nazis. But the opposite, like socialist cleaning supplies. I mean, psychologically, the psychological cleaning supplies, I'm aware that Canada has been implementing a program, and I have no idea how it works. I don't know if it's one of those kind of like the way weed was, that you go see a doctor, he looks at you and goes, yeah, looks like you could get some glaucoma. Here's your prescription. Or whatever. You understand what I'm saying? You're using a medical loophole. But I'm aware that they have psychedelics available for citizens of their country that you purchase directly from the government. No criminals involved. Well, I mean, with the exception of the government and who they're connected to. But doesn't that kind of make sense, though? Granted, it shows the hypocrisy, right? For 10 generations, you have the police gather all of the illegal stuff, and then the government sells it back to the people generation later. Oh, remember that stuff we stole from your dad when we arrested him for doing stuff we didn't like? Well, we're going to sell it to you now. You know what I mean? I'm not suggesting that anything at the pot clubs is that 1970s weed that was confiscated, at least not in any legitimate location. But I will more than suggest the reality. It's a fact. And if it's a fact in one place, it's probably a fact in other places. That in the Northern California area known as the Emerald Triangle, which is 3 counties, Mendocino, Humboldt, and Trinity counties, it is common practice for the county sheriffs and deputies to confiscate weed from hippie kids in their county, take it off duty to another county, sell it to somebody who will then sell it to that county. So they'll essentially, like, I had it happen in San Bernardino or Santa Barbara. I was sleeping on the side of the road. I had an ass ton of weed in the back. Cop knocks on the window, smells something, sees a film canister, had seeds in it. He takes it, finds another canister, has roaches in it. He takes it, makes me get out of the car, opens the back hatch, opens a backpack, looks in it, sees a bunch of weed, pulls the backpack out, closes the hatch, sets the backpack on there, checks out the weed again, comments directly to me, "That's some pretty good weed." I say, "Humboldt's finest." He takes the backpack back to his vehicle. He comes back, hands me a thing. It's a ticket for possession of over an ounce, 1 ounce or more. He disappears. Come to find out, they ended up dropping the charges, but what was in the backpack was a pound of weed. That's 16 ounces. So that means that he would be able to easily deposit 1 ounce as evidence, take the 15 ounces, ship it off, or drive it to some other place, dump it on some dealer's lap that has approval by their local sheriffs to do it. And if you think that's crazy, some of the grows I worked at actually had sheriffs living at the very end of their street as hired protection, and would give them a cut of every year's harvest in order to pay for their kids' school or whatever their kids wanted to do. So then each little pocket becomes this like corruption, scratching of backs in the backwoods. And it happened all up and down the 101. And then, of course, because it's criminally based, the real criminals came in the way of the Mexican cartel. And last I heard, they pretty much run that place to shit, which isn't much surprising because 60s hippie refugees from San Francisco who escaped to the mountains were more inclined to live in nature with the earth and understand and put into practice the practices of the previous natives of that region, some of which still exist in the form of specific coastal tribes that were only small pockets of specific dialect and religious or spiritual practices. I know that like Huron had some that, or Turok. There's a bunch of different tribes up and down that coast. But a lot of those hippies that moved there eventually met, natives that have lived there for generations before whites. It's a very difficult terrain to navigate and to exist in. Therefore, obviously, people don't generally want to live there. People go to cities because that's where business is, that's where money is, that's where excitement is. People would go to the country to escape all that stuff. Unless, of course, you're born in the country, in that which case you're looking to get to a city. I was brought up in the western Kentucky, a place they call Out in the Sticks. The closest town was a town called Paducah. I'm not sure how many people are there, but it's barely a truck stop town from Chicago to Nashville, I think. Of course, when I say that, Civil War days and, earlier times when the river was the higher usage of transportation, I'm sure it was a lot busier of a hub as it's, I think, right there in the Ohio-Mississippi River. Imagine how difficult life would be today if we never got past the notion that you needed water to commute large shipments or goods from point to point. You know what I mean? If you lived in a bunch of islands, you'd never know any different. You might not even understand what a highway or a bridge was. Excuse me. But you'd probably certainly be aware of how boats work, how wind works, how sails work. Anyway, I don't even know where I'm at. I'm at 57. Felt kind of like an hour. And as far as my baseline is concerned, I guess, where am I at with that thing? I don't have a scene that's just it, do I? No. Let me see where is it? There it is. Let's put that over here and do that one. Just checking my readouts. If you're going to scientifically test stuff, you got to test stuff. And I'm looking here. I'm rolling between 500 and 1,000 kilobytes per second. That seems pretty not good. That also seemed to change when I closed that previous window. I can see a jump in the CPU. It's kind of my next consideration. I've done the research, I think, 2 if not 3 times concerning the best processor either of my computers will handle. Currently, they're both i5. I'm not sure if it's 3rd or 4th or 7th, what generation it is. But I'm aware of the sockets on both computers. Although one's DDR3, meaning much older, it's actually, in my situation, better because it's got a higher output power supply than the DDR4. I'm assuming HP decided that 240 watts, which is essentially a bigger version of the exact same thing that runs in the small form factors, those are 240 watt power supplies. Point is without a higher power supply, it's impossible or extremely challenging to put any high-level graphics card or processor into the PCI slot that it will function with. Of course, the small form factor has those limitations as well. Long and the short of it, it's at this point going to be easier. And the only thing, that's why it's up so high, is because it's at 600 kilobits as the high and not 2 gigabytes. I don't know. I was just looking at my this here, and it jumped in my referencing. This is the same. This is what I'm talking about as far as the CPU. These are the 4 different threads or process chains that are being required simply by running a camera and a microphone, a web browser, and OBS, which controls all of the inputs to stream. So as bare bones as it gets, and actually I don't even see a Firefox running. So let's open up a Firefox and see. Boom, big jump. Yeah, but I want this in front. Yeah. I'm sure this would be different if I was using Chrome or Firefox. As far as I'm aware, is the easiest, most reliable, but also least advertising. I mean, you still find websites with ads and stuff, but it's not as interlaced with things like Explorer or Safari or any of those other web browsers, Chrome. But here I see everything running at about 50%, and I'm not sure what created or caused that jump in processing requirements. For some reason I see a 2. Okay, and what are my failed packages? Oh, my drop frames are only at 0.5%. That's way better. What the heck changed since last night or this morning? I don't know, but cool for me. That's a bonus on the test, right? Third test, and I'm getting better results. And I don't guess I don't have to know what I'm doing if I know that what I'm doing is getting positive results. It's only my second or third time at this thing, so wow, that was a huge bump, wasn't it? I wonder if somehow the nerds that run our network throttle things after dark because they assume businesses and schools won't be using it or something. I could even see a government project or funding that would be like, yeah, we'll give you money if you help students, but we're going to throttle everything when we think the students should be asleep. So 10 down and 7.3 up. And I'm pretty sure last night I was getting 2. And by looking at the drop frames, that's my one variable, right, on my testing process. I didn't change anything else. I did shut down and restart the operating system last night when I went to sleep. I mean, I shut it down and then today I just turned it back on. But it's been up and running for a while. So anything I would normally do would be in a cache or in a process, if that makes much sense. Though this was the first test I remember running. I thought about it earlier. That was funny because maybe it was important to be included in the test. And since I wasn't streaming back then, I wouldn't have had documentation. I realize I generally appear like I'm not paying much of attention, but it's generally because I got 4 or 5 other things I'm trying to pay attention to. I remember one of the funniest things I said to explain to a girl what it's like having ADHD, and I was like, well, if you knew all the decisions I had to make, you'd have ADD too. And that's the difference, or the weird part, I guess, with kind of normalcy, is you you grow up and all your life people say that that's something wrong with you, and then you get older and you realize that it actually makes it a lot easier to do multitasking jobs such as audio or video live production, especially the video. I found that it was extremely useful because in situations where other people would melt or freeze up or panic, I just lock in and I get her done. It was an interesting experience when you find yourself in a position where someone of your lack of experience in a particular circle of people shouldn't be accepted or expected. But at the same time, sorry, I just noticed some clips happening, which means I was getting too close to that mic. But anyway, I found myself in a situation where a lot of hippie kids that were working together as stagehands for festivals were kind of being observed in the same way that like college players get observed by scouts at practice. So there were, traveling, touring stagehands at the festival having a nice time, not working. I don't know how many people were aware of it. It wasn't a key center of it, but in certain situations it seemed almost obvious. I don't know if that makes much sense, but because of who gravitated around them, they were obviously important. And you pay attention to them, paying attention to other people, and acknowledging certain characteristics or traits. And there was a certain setting where we're setting up the front stage outside of Wavy Gravy's Hog Farm. I think they still call it the Hog Diner. But anyway, there was a little stage on the side there that people were setting up, and I brought sound and light. I brought light stuff and was running and operating the light stuff. But all of the other stuff had to be set up, including the projection screens, part of my responsibility, mixers for video and video inputs, some of which were provided by a different part of the crew. But that's later in the story. Long and the short of it is we're sitting there and these hippies are like having a beer at this bar while all of these young hippie kids are trying to set up this stage as well as the ambiance around it. And one of these things is a big flying eyeball, and it's got a light in it, and it might have a camera in it. But they were trying to figure out how to get it at a specific spot so it saw a specific angle of the stage. And to do so required climbing up in a tree, which for anyone in the stagehand industry understands, that would be someone who could eventually become a rigger, because riggers climb into high places and hang stuff. Generally, most of the time it's before and after the show, and they're the first to show and the last to go, because all of the things that are suspended from the structure of the building are got there by motors that have big chains, and 250 feet of chain is heavy. That requires a big motor. Big motor requires lots of power. Lots of power requires those motors to be strung on trusses where the lights would also be, and then the motors drop the chain and lift all of the truss connected to all the lights. That's generally why all of the trusses are connected on stage level and then hoisted up on a servo that controls a number or series or sets of motors. When we show up normally as an electrician or carpenter, we put the trusses together. We find the boxes for each truss. There's a stage director that tells us which truss gets which lights in which order, and then we string cables, and then we connect everything. And while we're doing that, riggers are up above us connecting motors to like beams in the building facility, structural hang points, and then dropping or lowering chains. We'll then connect the chains to the trusses with all the lights and or speakers connected. For the most part, lights all go up at once. Speakers, a lot of times, they'll be really tall array speakers where each one's like, just call it a couple feet, but they're shaped like that. So that way, when you put them together, they make this curve of an array. If you've been to any concert, it's standard anymore. Earlier days when I was in those weren't as common. A lot of times it was big subwoofers that you rolled, then others that you put on top, and then others that you would put on top or suspend. It's a lot easier to suspend heavy speakers than it is to stack them. Stacking would often require external safety rigging as well as forklift operators. Not uncommon. There's usually 2 or 3 on site anyway, because those are what generally are required for loading or unloading of the box trucks. One band could be, I've unloaded one band for 1 hour or so performance at one outdoor festival in Telluride, and it was not kidding you, 2.5 semi trucks full of crap. Following them was this really famous band called Cake. All of their gear fit on a picnic table, so you can show up with whatever you want. Carrying more stuff and dealing with more things might make 4 or 5 people feel like rock stars, and also give a whole bunch of people something to do as far as the road hands-on tour. But it's going to increase your overhead. It's going to make your overall payout a whole lot less, and you got to worry about a lot more stuff. Whereas when Cake showed up, I think it was, I imagine the drummer showed up with sticks, but nothing else. I was working backline for that concert at that time. I usually did 4 or 5 things because I'd get bored. I know he brought at least 1, if not 2 horns, because he plays trumpet and cornet and sax. It was trumpet type horns. And I almost think it was like maybe a couple 3 guitars and a bass. I don't even know if there were 2 basses options. Of course, it was a big festival in Telluride. Was it bluegrass? Was it blues and brews? Was it jazz? I think it was jazz. Was it jazz? Anyway, Ride Festival. It was one of those. We had a huge backline. Well, like we had one truck that was just drum kits. You know what I mean? When they all showed up, we set up a specific drum kit. It was like a 61 Swingerland, like one of those super classy blue glittery dudes. And the Rockstar band, Drive-By Truckers, the one with like 3 semi trucks full of crap, he comes out. Understand, they may or may not had a drum set, but they were such rock stars. They wanted to see what backline had. So they come over and he sees that drum set and just doesn't look at it. Now I'm working for the guy who's running the backline. I think he owned the company that rented the gear to the festival. And he's like, that guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And like the Rockstar picked the big Tama or like a huge drum kit with all the extra stuff. This other thing was just a small thing. And then when Cake showed up now, Cake was comparatively huge. Some people have never heard of Drive-By Truckers. Most everybody's heard of Cake. Their drummer showed up, like I said, maybe with sticks. And the first thing he saw was that drum set, and he goes, "Dude, whose set is that? Can I play that one?" And my backline guy looks over at me and some of the other guys, and was just like, "I told you, dude, that fucking kit rocks. That's a good drum set." And he used it. It was so funny because he used it as an IQ test. Because anybody that understood like music or recording or history or what that was, it's like, what are you doing? Normally a drum set like that is rarely dusted off in a specific studio that wants just that right sound. Like, I'm aware of recording nerds who they become instrument hoarders, because of this thing has just that sound, and I've met or been familiar with other engineers that would do the same thing with microphones. You know what I mean? Like, I would consider this microphone that is recording this, and again, I'm past an hour, I know that, by 20 minutes. But I got on a subject and it was interesting. Happens. Oh, but this microphone for 99 cents or $4.99, whatever it is, the Rock Band USB microphone, I mean, that's my normal room noise. And that's not really my room noise. That's the air conditioner in the front room. But my electronics and stuff's blocking the door, and I don't want to close it because then it gets hot in here. But my point is, with this mic, yesterday or last night, I was having a real issue with getting good levels to where it could be audible without having to do any edits. Now, as I sit back here, I see the USB mic, which is this mic, bouncing in the green and just barely getting into the yellow. And then when I come up here to where I was kind of normally, that just clips, so that means I'm too close. But if I work at this distance, that is almost, I could probably go up right about here. Click, 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 bang, loud excitement, yay, bang. At this point, no clips, decent audio inconsistency. Of course, like I did yesterday. Once the recording is done, you can then get a sample of it, look at it in Audacity, amplify the snot out of it. Like, I've done that, and people don't understand. I'm not doing it for the intention of listening to it. I'm doing it to prove that it's way down there, that our ears just don't hear it. So if you amplify it, you hear it, right? Once you can hear it, you can then edit it out, because if you can hear it, you can usually see it. You might have to zoom in, but this little, like, if I pause here for 2 seconds, the microphone is going to just bounce in the green at about -50. And that's that's approaching on professional level noise floor before editing. I have a friend in the Twitter sphere that's a writer and voice actor and does other stuff. I was helping him with some audio concepts, and I'm just now noticing the little black line that bounces up with it. Wonder if that's like an RMS peak and the other one's some other kind of peak. But anyway, when he was submitting specific recordings to some type of agency or somebody who was looking for voice actors, their requirements that I recall, one of them was a -50 decibel noise floor, meaning nothing. You could hear that, like you couldn't hear anything at that point or lower, I think. Now on the H2 mic, because of the way that microphone is set and because of the angle, you can't see it, but I'll click it on so you can hear it. So there's just the H2N microphone, and I'm aware, which side is it on? This side. I can turn it up, or I can turn it way down. Now right here, I see my noise floor at minus 60, bouncing up, but never getting close to the minus 55 on the H2N microphone, the camera microphone. On the USB microphone, now understand it doesn't have a level adjustment on the mic, only on the channel to the computer, whereas the Zoom microphone is the fancy one. That's this one, and it has a preamp or other level setter. Now if I get the two to match to be just about the same right there, the top one's going to be way too hot for what it's supposed to be doing. And I can see that because the noise is now at minus 40 and not minus 50. So the best thing I can do is set the volume for the H2N microphone so that the noise of the two different microphones, which include the preamps and everything that goes into OBS before it gets sent to YouTube for the stream, will be essentially dialed in and identical based on how much noise or background sound. Because you see what happened? I made it 2 hours before that happened, or an hour and a half. Now it's happening twice. My point is I'm going to get the level set using the noise because it's the most consistent. And then with this one, I'm already aware that this is pretty good and this is not too bad, but this is way too close, right? Like I can do whispery stuff. I can almost use this like it was an ACS, one of those fancy expensive bullshit microphones. But it's only because I understand how sound works and I don't have to be a dummy about it. That was just another little funny little stupidness. If you don't understand that your volume controls how the microphone works, I don't know what to tell you. It's like if you blast a drum head with the stick, it tightens, and therefore the tone that you get is a higher pitch. The same thing happens with microphone diaphragm. It's just instead of velocity is volume, and if you speak less or project less, different voice. My voice projects. I can't help it. It's just the way it rolls. Speaking of which, roll, pre-roll. I'm going to check the audio. Excuse me. I'm going to check the audio. Excuse me. I'm going to check the audio. Excuse me. Check the audio. Excuse me. Echo, echo. Echo, echo, echo. Echo, echo, echo. Echo, echo, echo. I'm not exactly sure why it sounds so crappy, because I'm hearing some glitchies in there. It could be the combination of the two microphones. I'm not exactly sure why it sounds so crappy, because I'm hearing some glitchies in there. It could be the combination of the two microphones. I'm not sure why it sounds so crappy, because I'm hearing some glitchies in there. It seems to be glitching when it loops back around, so at least I got audio. Hopefully it's gotten better. How is this working? I wanted to do something different just because it's different. Let's make this different or something. I just don't know what this does. I'm wondering if it, oh, there we go. It makes it so it's more of a fade. Functional cold Medina. So I guess that's weird, right? I started out talking about hurricanes and stuff, and now I'm wondering it's Wednesday, so from what I don't have it all memorized, to be honest. Coach's show was yesterday. And I think Thursday is normally the day of pre-game show. And most every day I see stuff, at least recently, from both Reach the People and what's the other one? Where's it at? Wasn't it higher on the list? It might be because it's from my other. When you have a bunch of different channels, it's kind of difficult to keep track of which ones are subscribed to which ones. But in my writing the other day, I mentioned if you watch the right videos or the right channels, and then you watch the poser channels, you can see who is getting their material from what actual original, content creator. Reach the People is run by Dion Jr. Or Darius Dion's. I think Dion calls him Junior or Bucky. But he's the in-house media guy, and he's got another channel, and I'm at a loss to remember it. Dang it! Reach the People and Well Off Media. That's what it is. And then there's a couple of channels that include a fella by the name of Uncle Neely. who's been working with Coach Prime for a number of seasons and years or decades, possibly. He's been doing, I like the 0 to 60s, getting back to stuff he's good at, like getting pros to come in on his team or on his, podcast. He used to play for CU, and then he was a pro. And now him and this other cat do this 0 to 60. It totally fits in the poser category that I mentioned, but he seems to have some sort of access to the team, and he seems to be adopting the team philosophy. He's buying into the system, as they say. And that's 2 hours ago. I wonder what most recent is. If I click on that, it might give me this is interesting. 42 minutes ago, max velocity, severe weather channel. These are one of the best things I like about YouTube, is that you can just find stuff that other people think are important to see and how they would do it, and they just do it. Like max velocity, he doesn't have to be on a network. He's just a weather dude that's got the tools just like the other weather dudes. What's he talking about? Let's hear what Maxi's got to say.
The past 30 years in the Gulf of Mexico. So this is going to break some pretty crazy records.
Sounds like a golf announcer.
It eventually makes landfall in Florida as a major Category 3, perhaps even a Category 4 hurricane tomorrow in Florida. There's a much closer view into what Hurricane Helene looks like this afternoon and evening. Notice all that convection that's building on the south and east side of Helene. That is where the most intense intensification is that we are seeing at this time. One thing I do want to point out is that there has been some short-term issues with dry air that's filtered into Helene. That's actually made it so that this is not rapidly intensifying yet. But we do expect over the next few hours that this will consolidate into one solid wall, and that's essentially going to allow for the potential for rapid intensification as we go into tonight and tomorrow morning, meaning that this is going to go from a Cat 1 hurricane up to a Cat 3 within about 12 to 16 hours. Hurricane Helene is already a very large hurricane at this point. The tropical storm force wind field is huge, and it's only going to grow in size as we start to see the interaction between the Fujiwara effect, where we're going to have this hurricane go up into southeast Georgia and Florida. Meanwhile, it's going to be absorbed by this other low pressure system. That's essentially going to elongate this wind field, so it's going to basically take up the entire state of Florida tomorrow with at least tropical storm force winds, hence why we have tropical storm warnings that extend from South Carolina all the way back into western and even now southeastern Florida. Areas like Miami-Dade County have now been issued into a tropical storm warning. Hurricane warnings are in effect just north of Tampa back through Panama City, and then we have tropical storm warnings in effect near Destin, Florida, where we are still at least expecting tropical storm force winds. The worst of the impacts right now are currently forecast to be in that red shaded area. We are expecting rapid intensification tonight in the southern Gulf of Mexico. This is what Helene looks like right now. Pressure is continuing to fall, and as we go into tonight, we are expecting this to rapidly organize down in the southern Gulf of Mexico. And notice how fast the pressure drops here. It goes all the way down to 947 millibars by early tomorrow morning. Eventually, as it approaches areas just west of Tampa, this is continuing to intensify into a strong Category 3 or even a low-end Category 4 hurricane. And by tomorrow evening, this is expected to make landfall back up in the Big Bend of Florida. Look at that hurricane force wind field. This area is where we'll be talking about the potential for catastrophic winds that could literally knock out power for weeks and in some cases even months back over near the Big Bend of Florida between Cedar Key back closer to Apalachicola. So this is a big deal. If you're near the coastline, again, you need to take evacuation orders seriously. This is going to be a very impactful hurricane. Whether it's a Category 3, 4, or 5 hurricane, we're still talking about a big-time impact area here across the state of Florida. Once it makes landfall, it's going to stay strong even all the way up through Georgia. It will probably still be a tropical storm even going into Friday morning back over in northern Georgia, where there will be a potential for catastrophic flooding. And we'll talk more about that here in just a moment. And eventually this moves through Kentucky, Indiana, and Illinois before it starts to really weaken out after that. The National Hurricane Center Center agrees with this current forecast and thinking, where they currently have this becoming a major hurricane by tomorrow morning as a at least Cat 3 hurricane, but it might even be a little bit stronger than that as it approaches Florida. Their thinking right now is that this is going to be a high-end Category 3 hurricane. I wouldn't be surprised in the next advisory if they raise that number a little bit, maybe to like Cat 4 winds, maybe like a low-end Category 4 hurricane. But nonetheless, we are expecting a major hurricane to make landfall in the Big Bend of Florida. All that red area there is where we have hurricane warnings. That is where we could see hurricane force winds move very well inland, even in parts of southwestern Georgia. Tropical storm warnings in effect for most of southern Georgia and almost all of Florida. And then tropical storm watches, which will be upgraded to warnings here pretty soon for those in South Carolina, Georgia, and as well as North Carolina. After this moves inland, it'll kind of spin out back over in Kentucky and Tennessee, and it will eventually be down to a tropical depression as we go to Friday night. This hurricane is going to bring tons of impacts across the United States, and one of the biggest ones will be wind gusts, and then we're going to talk more about storm surge, flooding potential, and tornadoes. Beginning with the wind threat, we are expecting wind to increase overnight tonight, eventually reaching tropical storm force winds tomorrow morning in western Florida, but notice how that really ramps up as we go into the afternoon hours. Tropical storm force winds reaching the coastline, going inland towards Daytona Beach, Orlando, and Palm Bay by about 4 o'clock. Hurricane force winds are reaching Tampa, Sarasota, and even maybe Cape Coral. So be mindful of that. Power outages will be elevated in those areas. And then eventually, once we get closer to landfall, the winds are really picking up back over in the Big Bend. And that's when we're going to see some of the worst impacts. It'll be sometime between about 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock tomorrow evening across parts of the Big Bend of Florida. Notice how the wind speeds upwards of 100 to 120 miles per hour. That is going to be substantial across the state of Florida, where we are going to have the potential for numerous to widespread power outages. And once we go on Friday morning, things start to calm down a little bit in terms of wind. And unfortunately, that wind threat is going to continue to move to the north. We're going to be dealing with this wind threat all the way through Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and eastern Tennessee, where some scattered power outages will be a possibility. And then once we go into Friday afternoon, that wind field really broadens out, but it's going to continue to bring some isolated power outages from southwest Ohio back even into southeastern Missouri and also southern Illinois. So make sure you have flashlights ready to go. Make sure you have battery backups. Anything that you need, make sure it's ready to go for power outages. If you have a generator, have that ready to go as well. In terms of power outages, we are expecting a pretty good amount of power outages, at least in Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. One thing I want to note before we go too far in this graphic, the key is a little bit wrong. The dark red area is going to be for scattered to numerous power outages, and then the purple area is for the potential for widespread power outages. So we are currently thinking that widespread power outages are going to happen anywhere from Tallahassee back into southern Georgia and up and down the west coast of Florida, mainly north of Cape Coral. Scattered to numerous power outages will be possible in the dark red area due to the magnitude and how large the storm is going to be, and then we could also expect some isolated power outages through parts of eastern Alabama, into Tennessee, Kentucky, and also back through the Carolinas. One of the worst things about what we've gotten out of this over the last 24 hours is the storm surge forecast. This is going to be a historic storm when it comes to storm surge. This is as bad as Ian when it came to the peak storm surge forecast. We currently have a peak storm surge forecast now up to 18 feet. I know that might not sound crazy, but it really is. We do not see 18 feet or 18-foot storm surge that often with hurricanes, especially even like a Cat 3 or Cat 4 upon landfall. Ian was nearly a Cat 5 upon landfall, and that produced up to 18 feet of storm surge for our forecast at least. So we could be dealing with something like that in the Big Bend of Florida. Even back over near Tampa Bay, we're still talking about a pretty significant 5 to 8 feet of storm surge, and then also up and down the east coast of Florida, mainly from Flagler, Volusia County line back into the South Sante River of South Carolina. We are expecting about 1 to 3 feet of storm surge in those areas. But overall, this is going to be a major system when it comes to the storm surge potential. And one other thing I want to point out is that this is a graphic.
These are things that they never tell you in the Midwest you have to deal with by
look like if you were standing on the mean sea level. So look at this graphic. If you're 6 feet tall, imagine 18-foot storm surge. It would be 3 times taller than your head. That is kind of crazy. So again, make sure that you are taking evacuation orders seriously. If you're near the coastline, it is highly recommended that you evacuate, at least if you're in one of those areas that has already been noted to evacuate. You might think that's it for threats, right? No, it's not. We have flooding and tornadoes still to talk about. This is the flooding potential across the southeast over the next couple of days. Flooding is going to be a major concern out of this, especially for the Big Bend near Apalachicola. We are expecting around 8 to 10 inches of rainfall there. Georgia and also back through North Carolina and South Carolina. This area here is expecting upwards of 8 to 12 inches of rainfall, and that could actually be a catastrophic event up there, where we are going to be talking about the potential for some flash flood emergencies at some point either tomorrow night or even as we go into Friday. We also could see that tonight with the rain that we're currently seeing. There are two high risks right now for excessive rainfall. One of which is back over northeast Georgia. The other one back over near Tallahassee. Again, this is the highest risk that you can get for excessive rainfall, and we are expecting potential for substantial flooding in these areas. So I would recommend if you're in these areas and if you're in a low-lying area,
that
you are prepared for the neighborhood. All of a sudden, whether that means you evacuate or whether that means that you are, at least have a plan in place. Make sure that you're monitoring the situation very closely. And I wish we were done talking about floods, but they just keep going. We also have tornado risk today. It's a pretty low risk overall, but a couple of isolated tornadoes will be possible across Florida, all the way back up in parts of Virginia and North Carolina.
Not sure if that noise is the coffee maker or if it's the sink, if it's drippy, or it's weird that the frequencies are similar to what it sounds like when the neighbor's dog starts going ape shit. I'll figure it was the coffee pot. So rude to put ads at the end of a thing. So anyway, this is going to be my final pause for noise floor. With the door closed, window closed, and two machines running, and one of which I'm aware does get picked up in these microphones. It is drastically better, and the H2N's barely popping on. The USB, the Rockstar mics, I think minus 55. The easy test for me anyway, as far as adjusting whether the preamps and the signal chain is correct, is I'll take that, I'll use this exact setup with the same computer, record in Audacity, just the noise floor, just the silence, the pre-roll, and then I'll click and drag, select everything, once it stops recording, obviously. Go to, I think, effects or filters and compression, amplification basically, and there you can just go to amplify and it will automatically scan the voice and or sound waves, find the highest peaks, and then use the difference between that highest peak and the space between what can be amplified without clipping, and then boosts the sound of everything. The point being is that when you do a pre-roll of noise floor and you do this and you click it, you will for me anyway, I get things like 50 decibels of amplification before it clips. That essentially tells me that I have a fair but not perfect noise floor, minus 50 decibels. The other function that can be hit or miss, and it always works on blank space, but if you put space like that in between words, you'll hear that if you put those words together quickly, that noise in the background is still there. So what a lot of these filters will do to remove the noise is you first select a sample of the noise without speech. You then select everything you want to remove the noise from, and the first selection is kind of canceled from the second selection, essentially using the concepts of phase cancellation and EQ mostly, I think, to remove those frequencies from the overall mix. That means that, and there are really good videos that way show it, you could have a fan right here, and it's not going to hear the fan because there'd be a noise gate on this microphone with an EQ that completely cancels everything that it does out. You can't change the fact that the fan will modify the wind, which affects how the sound goes from your mouth to the microphone. That it's just part of that reality. Of course, any direction you're going to speed it up or slow it down, right? And who doesn't remember speaking into a fan and the weird oscillation that you would get as the fan blades would bounce the sound of your voice right back at you while other parts would dissipate. It's essentially, if you can adjust the speed of that fan, you can also adjust the same way that those frequencies interact. I still got 3 half cigarettes from my day. I've yet to take my walk. I was thinking of rolling a joint for it's 3:30, so I could do that in an hour or so. Granted, I have to admit that the days are getting shorter and ending or getting darker sooner, so it's not as warm at 4:20 as it used to be. It's still really nice out there, though. I know it shouldn't matter, but I'm aware it does matter that the fact the door behind me is at an angle, as silly as a minor thing like that might be or seem, will definitely could drastically change how much these microphones pick up. Now, my physical body is a little bit in the way of the sound source to these. Therefore, that sound would have to bounce around, which is what sound does anyway, right? Get up, and jump around. Reusing my little filters. It's so funny. It's one of those things that you just kind of learn or eventually figure out. I learned that it used to be I would put the little cover back on it because it's tore up from using it as a scoopy. These have been my preferred rolling papers for a long time. They're organic hemp. The sticky works but doesn't taste when it burns in the same way that others do. Some papers like Zigzag, the paper you can taste is different depending on the style. I know that they recently started doing hemp and stuff. But almost all rolling papers have a gum that when you smoke the joint, you can taste. I can taste. This I can't. I don't taste. It's the the most tasteless rolling paper I've found in 20 years plus of rolling my own cigarettes or joints or whatever. I mean, a joint is just a cigarette that's green on the inside, right? In the 70s and 80s, they called them Martians. They called them Martian cigarettes, of course, because Martians are green. And a joint or a doobie is a green cigarette. Two things, I guess, sort of. I'm not sure when I picked it up or made the deciding factor. Normally, I only use the filters for weed or doobies. And I think the reason is in the little book of papers I was showing you, that's 50, and most, how can I put it? You get an ounce and a half of tobacco in this. I don't know what the math is, but functionally speaking, 50 rolling papers can work out perfectly for the amount of tobacco in that. Like to light that and let it sit so that it gets crusty. The way that stuff doesn't fall out. What was I saying about rolling stuff? Oh, right. So anyway, a pack of papers is a couple, $3 maybe. That other thing that I had that now I can't find. Oh, here. This is 10, I think it was $10 for one of these, but in it are 3 of these, and this is 100 papers. Got me? So, I got a few of these. I almost want to say I got 3 of these for $10, meaning each one is about $3 ish, meaning that each one of these is about $1, means that I'm getting 50 for half of that, or 50 cents, saving $2.50 every time I need papers. These don't come with the tips, so if I buy tips, I have to buy a different set of papers that have a collection of tips in them, or I can just do what I've been on doing. I put my roaches in the roach motel. When I run out of weed, I salvage from here. As I salvage, I end up with these little filters. And it's not really much of a filter. It just blocks the weed from falling out. And there I have about a bong hit worth of a roach, which can boink right on the top there. And then I toss this over in my little recycle, my filter pile. So yeah, I got a doobie rolled. I have 3 half cigarettes here sitting and waiting. I save those for later. Roll a freshie, get shoes on. Actually, I'll roll a freshie. I'll reduce a layer because I have sweatpants on. It's almost fall. Fall means expect 40-degree temperatures at night, at least. It's just normal. I brag that the cool part, the nice part about Boulder is that the weather almost always changes 30 degrees from nighttime to daytime. But realize that also means that if it's 70 in the daytime, it could get down to 40 at night. With the storm, it could go 10 or even more. It can change faster than that. I've seen it go from 60 degrees to 30 degrees and then 25 degrees and then back to 48 degrees in an hour period at Red Rocks. Meaning we were at a concert movie thing. It was a 4-hour, 5-hour event, and at the 2-hour mark, it starts to rain. At the 3-hour mark, it like pours and hails and snows, and then almost everybody leaves, and then the few remainders of us under the tree come out right during this part in the movie. It was like perfect timing. The clouds clear. It's like cool because of all the water and snow that's evaporating and little sleet pellets. But at the same time, it was warm. And then before we had gotten to the parking lot to get to our car to leave or whatever, the cement had started to, in lots of places, it was dry. It's like it's weird here. At least with my sweatpants on. I spend a lot of time at my desk right here doing what I've been doing, except not testing or trying to improve my ability to stream or whatever. I still think it's possible that with modifying settings, I will be able to, or that is possible is probably a better way of saying it. I think that it's possible that some settings can be adjusted to achieve an equal or improved resolution on the YouTube end of things while improving or reducing the resources or processes needed on my half. Again, we're now coming up on the 2-hour point. I'm closing it out to go take my daily Martian cigarette stroll. For whatever reason, I know I did two. This is, I think, the third test, second hour of the third test. In 2 hours' time, I've dropped 0.6, 354 frames in total, I think, which is 0.6%. And my kilobytes per second is green around the 2600 mark. Last night and the first test, I'm not sure what was different, but I was having issues and problems with both drop frames and bandwidth. So we'll have to do another test later. For now, I'm going to stop streaming, enjoy the smoke break, and yeah, at least we have another documentation in the books. Peace.